Okay.
Yes.
All right. So once again, today we're going to be taking a look at chapter 4, which is managing expenses. Okay. We're going to go a little out of order just because customers is so huge. It's split into actually 3 chapters. So I like to teach this part first because this one's actually more general. I would say this is for vendors. So anybody who works for you or who does when I say work for you, I mean like 1099 people or people who accomplish something for you, provide a service or even sell products to you. That's going to be your vendors, okay? And that's all about this chapter here is what do you do with these vendors? What can how can we keep track of them? How do we keep track of our bills? How do we keep track of everything there is that you need to know when it comes to getting in contact with a vendor. Okay? So, again, the definition of a vendor is anybody that provides a good or service that helps you either one, operate your business, or it helps you, um, uh, you know, build your business, right? For example, like an accountant is going to be someone you seek professionally to help you manage your books. Or maybe you need to purchase items from them because ultimately that's the inventory that you're going to sell. All right. Maybe you need to have a paint job done, a fixture, something like that. Those are all going to be considered some kind of service or some kind of product that they provide you. And how we determine our vendors is there are 2 types of vendors, right? Vendors that you pay on the day, pay with cash or check or credit card. People that you just pay off right then and there, right? And then we have your credit vendors, which you have a few choices there, right? Typically, they let you, they provide a service for you and they bill you afterhand and then you pay afterwards. Or let's say, for example, you make an agreement to finance or place on an account that you agree that you will pay them back later. So that's what the book pretty much kind of tells you right here is this whole thing about the difference between a cash vendor and a credit vendor. Okay, once again, we're going to take a look at every single way. So we're going to take a look at how we can use our cash vendors, right? And we can also take a look at what happens when we have vendors that we owe on an account, okay? So let's get started with the very, very first one, which is going to be the vendor center, okay? Now, there are 3 ways you can access the vendor center, right? So when we take a look at this right here, right, at the very, very top, it is split into your people, right? The first one that you see is going to be your vendors, okay? And this tab right here, if you click on here, that is your vendor center. It even tells you to go to the vendor center, okay? That's number 1 right there. Number 2 would be up at your menu bar. You click on that, and the first thing you have there is a vendor center, okay? And of course, the last one that's a default setting on your icon bar is going to be, you scroll down and there's one more right here, vendors. Okay, and it will take you right to the vendor center. Okay, now let's take a look at this real quick. We have this flow of transaction, and that's exactly what we're going to be taking a look at, except one thing. Today, we're only going to be looking at the enter bills section, okay? We're going to be taking a look at how we enter bills in there and how we pay our bills, okay? This top section up here where it says purchase orders and then receive inventory and then receive inventory or receive bill against inventory, right? This is going to be chapter 8, where we look into items and inventory parts, okay? So we're going to ignore that first part up there, but we're going to take a look at just the enter bills section in the vendor center, okay? So let's go ahead and click on that vendor center, and this is what displays, okay? So it's very important that you do need to know this because, once again, this could be your go-to place to add all your transactions that deal with the vendor, okay? So once again, this is the vendor center. The vendor center is going to give you a list of every single vendor that is included in your vendor list, right? With their appropriate respective account balances, okay? Other things that you'll see here is that if you actually click on each vendor, it's going to have a little small little contact info that you can get, that you could pick off immediately, right? And underneath it here is going to be a vendor transaction. So if I click a supply, these are the transactions that have occurred between me and this vendor, all right? So once again, that is pretty much an overview of what the vendor center can do. Now, when we look at how we can add transactions or deal with transactions with a vendor, it's pretty straightforward, right? If you go all the way up to the top of your window, you're going to see new transactions. And if you drop down that window, this is what you can do for every vendor. You can either enter a bill, you can pay a bill, enter a purchase order, receive items in inventory, receive items, or you can enter items for receiving it. Now that's just the bare minimum as far as all of these are the more common transactions that you will deal with on a vendor on a one-to-one level. In this case, since it's a generalized one, we're just in the general vendor center, this one's more for everybody, okay? But if we actually select, so we have a supply currently highlighted. If you go down to these manage transactions drop down, you have a little bit more that you can do with this person. I believe you have a couple more like shared, sales tax payments, okay, and et cetera, right? And you have, if you click on this report right here, you can actually run reports on them, okay? Other things than that, right, is that's just two ways that you can enter a transaction. Here's the third way, right? You right click on a particular vendor. Here's all the list that you can do for this particular vendor. And by you clicking on this, it allows you to pull the information from the vendor and fill in your form really quick and easy, okay? So this one maximizes all the transactions that you can do to this vendor, whether it's editing their profile, creating a new profile, making this person inactive, or doing the regular transactions like enter a bill or even create statements off of these people, okay? So that is what you can do by just simply right-clicking on each individual vendor, okay? Now, we're going to talk about how we can add a vendor. Okay, so in this case, there's only 3 ways that you can add a vendor. Or in this case, if you count how to get to the vendor center, there's 2 ways once you get to the vendor center, okay? So we talked about the 3 different ways to get to the vendor center, right? That is the only way that you can add a vendor to your list, okay? If you go to vendors at the top of the menu bar, there is no section where you can add a vendor. No section where you can add a vendor, right? Including on the home page, there's no add vendor button on there. You must add a vendor through the vendor center. So again, the 3 ways is the home page, the menu bar, and the icon bar, right? Once you get here, right, now there's additional 2 ways. Once you get to the vendor center, the other 2 ways is going to be either you click on new vendor right at the top here. Now you have the choice to either add 1 vendor at a time or you can add them as a list, which I did mention to you guys before. And we'll take a look at what the difference is between those 2. And then the last way is you can click anywhere on your vendors list and you right click and you can enter in a new vendor. Okay. Now, of course, if you did the readings, there's one more additional way that you can add a vendor as well, and that's using the quick add. And we'll get to take a look at that when we dive into our first transaction where we're writing our check or using the check register, okay? But in this case, These are pretty much the two ways that you can add in a new vendor. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the vendor and the difference between adding a multiple vendors in at one time. So this is a little bit more advanced for QuickBooks, but if you guys can actually copy and paste information in here pretty quick and easy. So if you are a pre-existing company that already has an established vendor list, this is where you can either have two choices. Export from Excel into here so you have everything there, or you can actually just go ahead and click in the row right here. There should be an empty row down below, and what you're going to do is you're going to add everything in there, per column, per row. Now, of course, when you're looking at this columns must match everything on your Excel for you to be able to import it in here. Now, once again, that is going to be something that is advanced level of QuickBooks users. So I'm not going to teach that to you today because I'm only going to teach you what the book teaches you. But I'm letting you know that if you were a pre-existing company, you don't need to enter in one vendor at one time. If you have 1 million vendors, what do you expect? That's going to take forever to enter every single one in there. So in this case, this makes it easier for you to be able to import or import a vendor list that you've already created. You just need to make sure that the columns line up, or the column that you have the exact amount of columns for before you import it, okay? So once again, this is entering in as a list, all right? And you could enter in as much information as possible, but that's not what we're here for. We are here to enter in a new vendor, one person at a time, okay? Any questions so far? Okay, so here we're taking a look at what happens when I clicked on new vendor, add a new vendor, okay? This new vendor form shows up, okay? It looks pretty easy because all you have to do is just answer the information that is provided, okay? So let me tell you this. So same idea here, okay? How you want your vendor's name to appear on the list is where you're going to enter it in up here, okay? Now, you're not obligated to place it there, because if you just go ahead and fill in right here in the company name, let's say this is just, I don't know, let's just say, for example, if I say this is the shop, okay? If I say this is the shop, and I move a lot around, it automatically fills it up here for you, okay? Now again, if I fill this part in first, this part will not be filled in, because once again, this could be whatever you prefer or however you want to organize your vendors list for, okay? So with this case, right, the example in the book should say that this is Boswell Consultant. Okay. Can you please mute your mic, please? Okay. All right. So once again, let's take a look at our book so we know exactly what information I need you guys to look at. So let me see. We're going to be entering in our vendor for the first time. So here you go. This page is not this page. This page is what I need you guys to be on, okay? So page 122, right? You guys are going to help me fill in all this information for Mr. Boswell Consultant. So once again, make sure that you understand this part right here, that this is what you want to list on your vendor list. This is what's going to appear. While this one right here, the company name, is what really the company name is. It's the legal name, all right? So again, you don't need to put a date of when this person was active, okay? So again, vendors and customers, they are relative. right? They come and go. So in this case, oftentimes what they would recommend you to do is like if this person isn't like someone that you're keeping track of, but let's say for those who are loyal customers that keep coming back for you or have been loyal customers for you for many years, then that's what ideally this section is when do you want to hold them like becoming a vendor on your list, and what kind of account balance do they have. So again, this is primarily geared towards pre-existing companies. Now they do recommend you not to add any account balances because especially for a vendor, because you're basically telling QuickBooks that you owe this person money, but you didn't tell them how. Okay, so they really recommend you if you're gonna be entering in a value here, don't do it. Best bet is to just enter in a bill and just date it back to when, so then the account balance reflects whatever amount it should be. Okay. All right, so once again, see, I changed this, but it didn't change it down here because that's how a QuickBooks works. Okay, so this we know is going to be Boswell Consultants. Consulting. I think it's consultant.
It's consulting, Boswell Consulting.
Okay, so it is consulting. Okay, so I'm gonna make changes here as well. Consulting. Okay. Now, person who's going to be the person that we're going to be dealing with is going to be Mr. Stephen. Yes, Mr. Stephen Boswell. Okay. Middle names are only useful if they prefer to be addressed that way or if their mailing address includes their middle name. But if he doesn't have one, it's okay. You don't need to bother with it. Now, what kind of position does Mr. Stephen Boswell have?
The owner.
He is the owner. Good. Okay. Now, let's see main phone number.
510 555 6305.
No, 0305.
0305.
Okay, perfect. All right, does he have a work phone number or a mobile phone number?
Yes,
Have a
it's
work
510 555 5500
5500.
5500.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Email address should be Steve at
As well, right now.
.biz. Oh, .us. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then, if that's his website, then the website's going to be www. Boswellrightnow.us. Okay. Excellent.
Doesn't the book say his work phone number is 5500?
5500.
510
510.
Yeah, 510 555.
5500.
Yeah, 5500.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's relative. You know what I mean? Yeah, as long as like you have something there. Okay, so now address details. Okay, so in this case, right, this is a cool feature that you can actually use when we're dealing with vendors. Okay, so this is going to be our billing address. Our billing address is going to be, I believe it's a P.O. box. Yes?
620.
P.O. Box 620.
Oakland, California.
Oakland, California.
94610.
Perfect, okay? Now, here's a cool feature that QuickBooks allows you to do, Okay. Now, if the billing information is the same thing as the shipping information, then you can go ahead and use this copy button. All right. This copy button, pretty much what you typed in earlier, right? If this is correct, you can go ahead and click OK, and it copies the information over there. Now, of course, oftentimes, like maybe Steven doesn't want you to send it to his name. He wants you to send it to, oh, whoa, it says the shop. Okay, we got to fix that. It's got to say Boswell Consultant. Okay. Okay, maybe, maybe Steve doesn't want his name on the package. He wants it to be shipped directly to the actual company itself. So if that's the case, right, when you bill him, it's going to have his name, obviously. But when you ship things to him, you could have it reflect just like that. Consulting, excuse me. Okay? So that's what's cool about using this feature. So as you progress and use QuickBooks more and more and more, you're going to notice that things are going to start filling in automatically for you. Okay? So that is the first part of setting up Steve Boswell or Boswell Consulting, right? That's just the first tab. Now, on the left column here, we have 2, 4, 6 different tabs that you can have for this vendor. And we're going to go ahead and go through, hold on, I think I counted wrong. 2, 4, 5 tabs, right? That was our very first one, was info. Now, the next tab we have is going to be payment settings, okay? So once again, this account right here is going to be the account number that you are given by Mr. Boswell, okay? Because once again, we're looking at, this is our vendor. This is who we are purchasing from, or this is the person that's providing us the service. So therefore, this account number is our account number, not his account number, but our account number. So I believe it is 66-112. Okay. All right, and of course, I don't believe Mr. Boswell gave us any credit limits. Okay, but
Yes.
he did.
2%. Yeah.
What is it?
2%, 10 net 30.
Okay? So that is a term, not a credit limit.
Oh, okay. No, sorry.
Okay, so again, terms, right? Let's see if there's one that exists the way that Isabel just described, right? You said 2%, 10 net 30?
2%, 10 net. Yes.
Perfect, there it is, right? We already have that as a standard term that most vendors or customers could use. So there you go. 2%, 10 net 30, okay? Now, once again, because I entered in that information previously, okay, so print name on the checks. So you can either have it Steven, or I guess this one's Boswell Consulting as well. Okay, Boswell Consulting. Okay. Now, of course, what does price? Okay, so this is what kind of billing rate level does this person provide us? In this case, there isn't anything there. We'll talk about what this is in a few in chapter 2 and chapter 3 when you actually get a specific rate because you're a particular client. Now, in most cases, like, right, we're using Boswell Consultants. We don't know what we're using consulting for, right? Is it consulting on profits? Is it accounting consulting? Is it consulting for how to use cameras? We don't know anything about Boswell. So in this case, we don't know what kind of price level that Mr. Boswell is going to be giving me. Okay, so next piece of information is going to be tax settings. So once again, this section right here is going to be basically saying how this vendor is going to be taxed at. So once again, when we talk about taxes, right, the purpose of QuickBooks is to make it a lot more easier to file taxes, especially when you deal with people like this. This guy is an independent contractor, Okay. Now this is for when you set out your W-2s or set out all of those your taxes that you filed for all your minor expenses and all those big expenses, right? So this is what's going to be very, very useful to prove that Mr. Boswell Consulting is in fact a 1099 worker, right? Because he could claim that he's just a mere expense, or if he claims that he's an independent contractor, he can come at you and say, "Hey, I did some independent contract working for you. Can you provide me a 1098 form?" Right? And that's what you can do. And because you collected this information from him prior to that, then yes, it'd be a lot more easier for you to process that paperwork and be able to claim that yes, this guy has in fact done service for me as an independent contractor. Okay, so in this case, I believe his social security is going to be 123 1 2 1 2 3 4. Okay, so again, if they're an independent contractor, a 1099 worker is going to not have their own business tax ID. They're going to be using their personal ID, because once again, independent contractors, they file taxes as an individual level. They don't file taxes as a cell they can file under the long form with the 1099 as a self-employed. All right, but they can't be using a business identification number or an employer identification number. It must be some sort of social security number. Okay, little fun fact there. Okay. So now that we figured that part out, let's go ahead and click on account settings. So every time we use Mr. Boswell Consulting for something, what is the expense that we're going to be connecting him or linking him to? And in this case, it's going to be professional fees. Okay? Because, right, he does professional services for us. We don't know what it is for, but he does professional services for us. So every time we write a check to Mr. Boswell, it's going to automatically link that this is straight for consulting fees. Okay? Or in this professional fees, right? So you can link up to as many as you want, but in this case, we only use Mr. Boswell for one thing, and that is for seeking professional advice. Okay. Last but not least is going to be my additional info. So once again, here are a few things that we can see or use. So here it says, what kind of vendor type are they? Now, we'll talk about a vendor type in a minute, but so vendor types basically are another means for you to organize the people that are in your business. So in this case, I want to keep my professional people in one area, my purchasing people in another area, my fixtures and my labor costs, I want them to be in another area, or someone that actually works for me as a 1099. So if I need to rent somebody, I want to keep them separate. So that's all that vendor types are. They're just another means to just keep separating and organizing your people even further by breaking them down into specific categories. So in this case, he belongs to consultant. Okay? And of course, what county does he belong to? He belongs to Alameda. Meta. Okay, good. Right? Now, once again, this is a custom field, right? We talked about this in chapter 7, right? We talked about how you can gather information from Mr. Boswell, and, it will, one, help you, strengthen your relationship as a vendor to customer relationship, or you could also use it to spark conversations like, hey, did you see the football game the other day? Did you see the Raiders? Whatever it is, right? If you can make that connection, or possible things is maybe Mr. Boswell will hold an event that will invite every single client that Mr. Boswell has served to celebrate, I don't know, his 10-year anniversary. I don't know, but that could be something that could possibly be. So there's many things that you can do. So if I go ahead and click define fields, right? So far, I have a few things here. So spouse's name. That would be nice if to find out if Mr. Boswell has a wife or not. Okay, or significant other, whatever it is, right? I guess one that you could use is I'm gonna say what his business establishment date. Okay, I think that would be perfect for just a vendor. Okay, remember you have up to 15, and each person can have 7. Right, and I'm just gonna click OK for OK up here. Okay, and I'm gonna click OK. So once again, now it has it up here. So spouse's name, let's say Mr. Steven is married to Nancy. I don't know. Random name, Nancy Boswell. Okay. Perfect. Great. Okay. And then we could say his business establishment date could be, let's say it's May 25th, 2000. Okay. Let's say he's going on 21 years now. So congratulations to Mr. Boswell. This is a great way that you can also if this person's a longtime friend, you can send him congratulatory gifts, whatever it is, whatever means is for you to keep a relationship between you and your vendor. Okay? And then at the very bottom, I'm going to click OK. All right. If you have your sound on, you should get a beep of approval. In this case, I guess the sound is off on my end. Okay. All right, so there it is, Mr. Boswell Boswell Consulting, right? And you can edit this information any given time, right? You could double click on it. It will pop up right there. Notice this, for any reason that you stopped requesting services from Mr. Boswell, you have a little button right here that says you can make this person inactive. Okay, you can always click OK. Now that's one way you could do it, right? You could double click, you can right click, edit, or a great way is there's this little pencil right here that you can edit the information at all times. You can even attach files, like maybe he gave you a business card. You can attach it there, right? Scan a picture of the business card and upload it and attach it to here. So you always have his, card information or even his company logo. Whatever it is that you need to, attach on here that makes your vendor information, better, okay? And that is it. Any questions on how to add in a vendor or create a new vendor?
Did you use today's date for the review date?
Review date?
When you put in Nancy and the date?
No.
Under additional
No.
settings?
So I made up an account or a field that says business establishment date.
Yeah, okay. But I just meant, did you put today's date or should we put today's date since we're adding it today?
Well, this is business establishment date. If you talk about review dates, I mean, do you have is there any means for you to have to review this person's case?
Oh, well, no, I meant, I didn't mean review date. I meant
Are you talking about up here where if you go to additional information?
No, under additional info, didn't you click on define fields?
I did.
Put those in? Okay. And then for the business okay. Oh, did you add the business establishment date?
I just did.
Okay. That's the part I missed.
Okay. Yeah, because, I'm just making up things like for custom fields, you're not obligated to follow whatever I'm doing. I just said, you know what? It'd be nice to create my conversations, especially you're a photography, right? You're a photo type of service, right? Maybe a business establishment date is great because what if there's a grand opening? boom, you automatically have the business establishment date because you participated into the grand opening. So once again, you can collect as much information as necessary for you to go ahead and build your relationship, okay? Maybe 10-year anniversary. Hey, Mr. Boswell, how's your wife Nancy doing? You know, great job. It's been 10 years. You know, and then they might even invite you to do a photo shoot for their 10-year anniversary. So that's, once again, defining fields is subjective. It's like whatever information that you can grab between any person is only going to help you build your business a lot better. Okay, but I just added 2 random things in there just for the heck of it. Okay. Any other questions in regards to setting up a vendor?
I was off a line. Where did you go to add the information?
What do
I
you
mean, I finished the information and the address and everything. So where you go?
to add custom fields?
Uh-huh.
You go down here, define fields.
I'm on the, when I add the Boswell consulting address and everything, press OK, and then, I'm sorry, I just got off.
Address information on the top. On the side, on the left side, you have an address and information. You have everything.
Yeah, you have everything in here, right? Marlene?
I don't know what.
Like,
Okay.
are you trying to add a
Okay.
custom
Okay.
field, or are you trying to add more? What do you mean by you're adding stuff?
It's okay. Just keep going. I mean, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, okay, no worries. Just let me know. Okay, so that is how you add a customer, right? Any questions? Okay. So once again, you can update any information at any given time because the one thing about QuickBooks is that you can edit anything at any given time. You can even edit a transaction if you accidentally made a typo. You could just go right back into it and just edit it. All right, that's the great thing about QuickBooks is because it's not permanent. Okay. Now, with that being said, like for any reasons that your vendor decides to move locations or has a new branch office somewhere else, you can add that information in the fields given in each profile. Okay. Any questions? Because I'm going to move on. Okay. So that is how we enter in a vendor. Okay. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a book and see what section is next, okay? So after we talked about adding a vendor, okay, the most important thing about adding a vendor is that it just makes it so much more easier to fill out your billing information, especially with all the addresses and all that information and things like that, right? Now, here's a few things that you could also do too that are in addition to also setting up your vendors is you can also add class tracking. Now, what does class tracking do? It basically divides or categorizes your income and your expenses into specific categories, right? And it could be for department, line of business, it could be for profit centers, it could be for location. So any means that you think is necessary to be able to organize your information, especially your expenses and your income based on some kind of importance to your business, right? So for this example in this class, we're going to be using class tracking to represent the 2 different locations that that Imagine Photography has. We have a San Jose location and we have a Walnut Creek location, okay? So we're using the stores as our means to keep our expenses and our income separate, especially when you want to run your profits, right? We could run profits to see, well, which store is actually doing better, which store is costing so much expenses for, or which stores have more clienteles coming through, okay? So once again, that's one thing that you can use for class tracking is to be able to do that. Now, once again, you can read the book on how to activate this. I don't want to spend the time to do it, but once again, it's just an edit. It's just a preference that you can do. You're not obligated to have class tracking unless you find some kind of means for it for your business. But in this case, in order to activate it or turn them on, you're simply going to go to your edit on your menu bar and you're going to click on preferences. Make sure you're on company preferences, okay? Under accounting, you'll have that little section where you can turn them on, okay? Once again, I'm not going to do it in class just because it's already on. And yes, okay. All right. So that's class tracking. And then again, we'll see this very often when we actually enter in our bills, because you'll see that there'll be a small section on our bill that allows us to keep track of which location this transaction belongs to. Okay. So here's just getting an example of when if you run a profit and loss based on your class, you can run it against and you could see that it's comparing the different locations for this company. Okay. Now, as far as keeping track of job costs, okay, so this one is where we assign expense or income to particular customers. So a great example would be if you are creating a purchase order and you're buying it specifically for a customer, not because you're just buying it for the general public, for people, for anybody to grab. You're buying it for a specific person. That's where job costing is going to be used. You're going to assign that this purchase order is going to go directly to them and they're going to be the one that's going to pay for it instead of you, right? Because they asked you to buy something for them. All right. Once again, this one is definitely more prevalent or well used in chapter 9. You'll see it here and there for chapter 2, but once again, chapter 9 is going to give you a better understanding and outline of how to use job costing for what it's meant for, okay? Not just to assign, oh, I'm gonna buy this for this person. No, you can use job costing for multiple scenarios, okay? And like I mentioned before, chapter 9 will dive more deeper into that, okay? So yes, we can assign bills to our customers. Okay? Now we're going to be taking a look at paying vendors, okay? There are many ways that you can pay a person, right? You can pay them with cash. You can pay them with a check, with a credit card. You can use nowadays, right? We got Square. We got I forgot what the other one is called. We got Zelle, right? You can electronically transfer money simply by just linking your bank accounts and just sending it through via mobile or whatever it is, right? So right now we're living in the digital age where electronic fund transfers is more widely used. Apple Pay is a perfect example, right? You're not taking your credit card and taking out, you're taking money from your account digitally and you're transferring it to the company itself, okay? So once again, a lot of these things, right, are means of how we can pay a vendor. Now, for QuickBooks, I will tell you this. If you're going to be paying with cash, even QuickBooks recommends not to use cash because you basically are defeating the purpose of using QuickBooks for using QuickBooks, right? The purpose of having QuickBooks around is to help you manage your money, right? And the best way to manage your money is not by using cash because cash, you know, it's pretty simple. If you have 20 bucks in your hand and you spend $12, you already know that you have $8. You don't need a program to tell you that, okay? But other things too, they recommend not to use cash because it's a little harder to keep track of. Meaning you have to collect all of these receipts and you have to justify why you use cash for this particular transaction, right? So they said, you know what, if you're going to be using cash, don't use QuickBooks. But For all the other ones, like the most common one for businesses is to use a check, because a check has a paper trail. It has an account number on it. It's got the check number on it that allows you to keep track of it, right? And the way you keep track of it is by telling QuickBooks who did you write the check out to, why did you write the check out for, and how much you wrote it out for, okay? So that's the cool thing, and that's what we're going to take a look about today. We're going to take a look at how to use QuickBooks to record checks, okay? Or how do we use a credit card transaction, or in this case, how we pay our vendors is you can either write a manual check and then update the ledger for it or the register for it. You could use the write a checks window, which once again, I'll tell you what you actually need to have in order for you to do that. Or you could simply use the pay and enter bills function with QuickBooks. Okay, QuickBooks can keep track of your bills and stuff, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at the first example here. All right, so the first example is going to be how to use a register. Now, this is going to be a fun one because this is just the simple, I guess not simplest way, but it's just a way that you can enter in a transaction without dealing with too many windows, okay? So the very first one is, let me introduce to you what a register is. So if I go to my chart of accounts, notice this. Look at all the column all the way to the right. Notice that there's account balances in certain accounts. Anything that has an account balance, so your permanent accounts, which are going to be your assets, your liabilities, and your equity, are always going to have a register or an account balance, okay? For a means of closing them out or any means of not having them exist with an account balance, you're basically saying you're done with the business, okay? A good example is if you close out your checking account, what does that tell everybody? You're done doing business, right? Because you have no cash going in and no cash coming out because you closed your bank account. So that's the idea here, is that's why they're called permanent accounts, because they never close out at the end of a given accounting period. Second thing too is that they're always going to have some kind of account balance in there, okay? And with those three, they're the only ones with registers, okay? Your other two account types, which is your expenses and your revenues, your income and your revenue, your expenses and your income, they are going to have quick reports, okay? They're not going to have registers. They don't have account balances. The reason being is because they are written off and closed out at every single given accounting period. Because if you think about it this way, right? It's a perfect measurement of how we can tell for profitability is by taking all of our income, countering them all against our expenses, and that's a perfect measurement of how many expenses and how much income we gained for that accounting period. So for example, right, if we do this on a monthly basis, right, every single month you're going to have a different number of revenues and a different amount of expenses, right? Maybe this month I had to pay for advertising because it's July, right? We had a July 4th sale. I had to buy advertising, where in August there is no holiday. So I may not have to have an expense for advertising expense in August, okay? So in this case, it's kind of weighing the options of every single month that you create your profitability reports is going to scale something different, because your revenues are going to fluctuate. Maybe for this case, it's summertime. The sun is beautiful. The grass is really green. Perfect time to take a picture, okay? Same thing here, okay? And on top of that, it just depends on how your business runs, okay? And they do not have registers. They are quick reports, okay? Now, what does it mean to have a register? So if I go ahead and double click on my checking register right now, what you're going to notice is this is going to pop up. Now this, okay, for my accounting folks, this is an equivalent to a ledger, okay? You're going to add in your transaction, and it's going to give you a running balance at the end of the day, okay? Now, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, a ledger is basically an account that allows you to keep track of all of your transactions, but at the very end of the day, you're going to know how much you have in each account. So in this case, my checking account, this is how much I have in my bank account right now. Okay? It's this $11,564. And every transaction that I enter in here manually, it's going to change this number automatically as soon as you enter in the transaction. Okay? So perfect, here we are at the checking register. Now again, that's not the only way you can access your checking register. You don't have to access, You don't need to access your checking through the chart of accounts. You can go through your checking right here by clicking check register, okay, on the home page, right? You click on this, the first thing it's going to ask you is, well, which account are you looking at, okay? In this case, because we're looking at just our banking in general, it's only anything that's considered a bank account. So here, checking, money markets, savings, and journal entries, okay? We'll talk about journal entries later on. But in this case, checking is what I want. And if I click OK, it's that same exact window that we just saw earlier, okay? All right. Other ways that you can enter in the check register as well is if you go to your banking on the top of the window, right? And you, oh wait, I'm on the wrong one. Banking, okay? And you click on use register, right? The same window pops up, but this time you have a list of every single account that has a register, and you're able to access it through the use register window, okay? And here I want to go into checking. I click on checking, I click OK, and there you go. That same exact window is going to appear. So that's what a register is, and this is how we enter in a transaction using a register, okay? So here the date is going to be, so as you can see, the thing about QuickBooks is that it will always pull you in the future or in the time like today. It will always pull you up to date today, all right? So one thing that you have to do is instead of typing in a date, they do recommend you to use this little tiny calendar right there and select the date. That's the safest one because you definitely don't want to make any typos here, okay? Now, if you're trying to enter in like a birth date, then yes, you can type it in and then use the little calendar to select the date. So you confirm with QuickBooks that this is the correct date, okay? So I believe this day is going to be February 8th, okay? And this is where you're going to be entering in a few things here. Now, they do recommend you to use the register to enter in any checks or anything like that if you're writing a manual check, okay? Or if you decide to use your debit card, you can also enter it in here as well. If you're doing an electronic funds transfer, all you have to do in this check number right here is basically add in how you paid the vendor. In this case, right, if I paid with the debit card, I put in debit. If I transferred money to their account, I put EFT. But in this case, I actually wrote a legitimate manual check, and that whatever check that you wrote out, you're going to copy that number here. So if you wrote a physical check out, the numbers must match, okay? So in this case, it should be 331. I don't know why it jumped to 332. And it's going to automatically predict that it's a check. Okay? It will fill in automatically. Okay? Payee is going to be Bay Office Supplies. Okay? Now notice this. Every time I type in a letter in here, right? If I put Ace Supply, right? It creates a drop-down menu, right? It's very similar to Excel to the point where it gives you options to choose to fill out the information. So that's why it's quicker to use QuickBooks, because if you enter in a vendor, it only makes it that much easier to fill in any form, any register, or any list. Okay. So with that being said, like once again, it would auto populate trying to guess who this vendor is. Okay. And in this case, right, I type in Bay Supplies. Nope, nothing there. Bay Office Supplies, right? It doesn't recognize it in there. So if I go ahead and click away or click somewhere else, right, what you're going to notice is you're going to get an error message saying, hey, it will tell you that, hey, this person doesn't exist in your list. Would you like to quick add them? And this is going to be the third way that you can enter in a vendor. You can enter almost anything as you go in QuickBooks. And that's what makes it great about QuickBooks, is that you're able to just go ahead and flow within the transaction, complete the transaction without having to stop and be like, wait, I need to add a vendor in. Oh, wait, I need to add this account in. It does it for you automatically. Okay, so here it tells you this person doesn't exist, so I'm going to choose to quick add. Okay, now it's going to give you an option. Well, who are you paying? Or who's this person? This person is a vendor, and I'm going to click OK. All right, is everybody with me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. It's getting a little quiet over there. So then now it says Bay Office Supplies. So then in the next account that I'm going to say is, well, since I bought office supplies, I'm going to type in office supplies. So here my account populates saying, hey, you have office supplies right here. Account number 600 or 64,900 is going to be my office supplies. Perfect. That's exactly what I need. Office supplies. Okay. And then again, in the memo, I can say I bought office supplies. Okay. And then here, for what amount did I write this check out for? And I believe it's $128.60. Okay.
Yes.
$128.60, right? So once I've done that, now, here is something I need to let you guys know. The enter key is not your best friend, because if you just enter, you're just going to accidentally enter a transaction without even finishing it. So your best friend is going to be the tab key. The tab key. Okay, so for example, right here, if I am in this column, if I want to move across the fields, I just press tab. But once I am at the end of my window and I completed and filling out everything, then I can press enter to validate that this transaction has been complete. So if I go ahead and do it, now I get the beep of approval. Okay, and check it out. When I tapped in that I entered in $128.60, my bank account has automatically refreshed and recalculated saying, hey, you now have only $11,400 left. Okay? And that's how you use a register. Any questions?
You buy a printer paper on the memo.
Mm-hmm.
To write the
Well, in this
printer
case, right, I will do that when we dive into the next section. Okay? Because you did technically buy office supplies, but in this case, I didn't buy just only paper printer. Because in the next exercise, it's going to show you that you can choose to split the payment. Okay?
The what?
That you can split the payment.
I can I didn't hear what you said.
You can split the payment.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and that's the next section. So here, Once again, your memo doesn't have to be 100% accurate to your book. In this case, if I write, I bought photo paper or printer paper, right? That's actually not true, because when I actually look at the next exercise, it shows that I bought printer paper and I bought internet cables. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So now that I've entered in my transaction, check this out. If I click on it anywhere on there, right? And let's say I double click on it, it will populate this window right here. Okay? And this window will allow you to either split or allow you to modify this check. So for example, right, like I've mentioned before, we only paid $100 for printer paper. The $28.60 was actually we bought internet cables. So how do we split it? Pretty straightforward, okay? Now, I don't know why in your book it says the same thing, and it kind of bugs me because in 2018 they had the split button, and it keeps saying that there is a split button. There is no split button, okay? So in order for you to split it, you just go ahead and directly add it right in there, okay? So here, once again, I have office supplies, right? In this case, I only bought $100 worth, right? So here, I'm going to actually manually take it in there. And that means the next section, or the next line that it's splitting the cost for says that it's got to be for $28.60. It automatically calculated that for me. So here in this memo, I can now say that I actually purchased printer paper. Okay? And so this is what I was talking about class, okay? So if I bring this over so I can show you guys. This has now a little section that allows me to split my cost amongst the locations that I have. In this case, I actually bought the printer paper for the San Jose location, okay? And for this one, right, it tells me that I actually bought internet cables for my Walnut Creek location. So in this case, they told me that I need to go and find it under internet and computer and internet expense. Okay? And what I'm going to say is that I purchased cables. Okay? And it was for $8.60. And once again, I bought it for my Walnut Creek location. Okay? The total is still the same, right? In this case, I'm splitting that I went to Bay Office Supplies, right? Maybe I went to the store randomly to just pick up things along the way before I go to work. And I end up stopping by Bay Office Supplies. And this is what I bought. I bought stuff for both locations. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close. Okay? Then you're going to get this window that says, you have made changes to this transaction. Would you like to save it? Yes. You get that second beep approval, and then now let's take a look. Here tells me that this check that I wrote out was a split cost. Okay? So that's the cool thing about QuickBooks and using the class tracking is that you're able to split costs, especially your expenses, amongst which locations that you divided it amongst. Okay? And then in this case, the class here is used as location. Okay. Any questions there?
Alan has a question.
Yes.
I'm sure this is correct, but when you went into Bay Office Supply and I was looking in the book and it said click on 331 to get there, I couldn't get there, so I went down and hit the splits button and got to the same window and just hand typed it in, so I got the same results on my screen, so that's okay, right?
Yes, because I was talking about earlier, right? Now, I don't know where you see the splits button, but on my end, because they told me that you're supposed to click on it, I didn't see on my page, I don't see anywhere where it says splits button.
Go back to the other page, though, where for the checking account.
Okay?
right there at the very bottom left.
Oh, I get it.
Says
Right here,
split.
splits. Got it.
Yeah, that's where I hit.
Okay.
Now, the only thing I don't have is under my memo, office supplies, but I can go back in and edit that to put that in.
Oh yeah,
But-
absolutely. This once again.
But as far, I did split the accounts
Mhm.
and I did split the amounts, just like you did, and got the same result.
Mm-hmm. So once again, yeah, so you could use this, or I just double clicked it and just manually split it right there, and it did the same thing, because that's exactly what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, you're also entering that same exact amount in there as well. So at the end of the day, here you go. It's the same method of adding a transaction. It's just how you got there. Now again, I put office supplies just because it's just general. Because earlier it said printer paper, but that's not true. I didn't only buy printer paper. So again, the memo is whatever you want to put in there. Okay. In this case, I think office supplies makes more sense than printer paper. Okay. And once again, the beep of approval allows you to ensure that your transaction is there and it is saved. So if I ever close this out and I come back to this page, it will be there. Okay. All right. Any questions? No? No questions?
I don't have any right now.
Okay.
No.
All right. Okay. So next section is going to be using the write a checks function. Now, here's a few things that you need to know before you use the write a checks function. You need to purchase the actual checks paper. So the reason that they Intuit created a write a checks function is for the purpose of using their Intuit software to print out checks for you to make your business a lot easier, to send them out to your people instead of ordering your checkbooks through the bank. This one you can print it there and have it sent out. Now, there's lots of rules and regulations on what you can do about printing it. You can't just print it on a simple regular piece of paper. I mean, if you could do that, anybody can have their own business and write fake checks all they want. But in this case, you do need to purchase this either through Intuit or actually purchase it through your actual bank itself, all right? These are specialized paper, and when we get to the print check format, I'll tell you exactly what types of papers that you can obtain from either Intuit or from your bank, okay? Now, some cases actually prefer you to even have special ink for you to print on the special paper so it becomes legitimate lies, okay? But in this case, in most cases, it's just regular printer ink, but you do need to get the special paper from some legitimate treasury agency before you can even start using the Intuit write a checks window function, okay? So here you go. Write a checks is pretty straightforward. We just click on write a check on the home page, okay? And look at this window. It looks very similar to the one that we just looked at about 2 minutes ago when we took a look at the previous page when we enter in that payment for the Bay office supplies, okay? So in this case, what we're going to do here is this is one way that you can write a check, okay? Other ways you could do it is you could go to banking, okay? Banking on the menu bar, and then you have that write a checks at the very, very top, okay? Write checks, okay? Other ones that I've seen that other people have found is that if you go to your chart of accounts and you click on your checking account, you'd be able to write a check that way too. Okay. Now again, I don't commonly use this one, so once again, the ones on the chart of accounts is not as widely used as the one that's on your home page and your menu bar. Okay. So let's go back to that write a checks window. Okay. So here, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you are going to be writing a check out from your checking account. There are a few things you can write a check out for, such as your savings, but again, most of this is going to be through the checking. Okay, you definitely want to make sure that the check date is there. So again, it is still February 8th. And who are you going to make this payment out to? You're going to be making this to Orlando Properties. So see that? I just typed in OR and boom, it populated Orlando Properties. I don't have to type up the whole thing. I just simply click on it and select it. Simple as that. And look, it filled in all the information such as that they're going to send this check out to this person right here. And this is the address that they're going to send them out to. Okay? So that's what's cool about providing information already to QuickBooks. It makes it that much easier for you to, instead of having to type everything out manually or having to look up the contact information, it does it for you automatically. Now you have two options. You can either choose to enter in the amount here, or you can actually just go ahead and type in your amount here and it will calculate up here. So your choice. It doesn't matter. In this case, we already know it's for $3,200. So therefore, boom, it's going to automatically populate down here for $3,200. Okay. Now, once again, because I typed in Orlando Properties, and we're going to take a look at memorizing transactions in chapter 14. When we memorize a transaction, right, the minute I typed in Orlando Properties, QuickBooks automatically associated that this is for a rent payment. Okay, so that's what's cool about QuickBooks too, is that you can memorize transactions. So then instead of having to type in for Orlando Properties that I'm paying for rent expense, it will automatically populate for you. Okay. And once again, in this memo, I'm going to say this is rent for San Jose, okay? And you can also use the copy and paste feature here as well. I just copied it using my keyboard Control-C, and I can paste it in just like that, okay? I'm not quite sure if you could, yeah, you're not able to copy it using the right-click method. You do have to use your keyboard, okay? So Control-C for copy, Control-V for pasting, okay? That also saves you extra time in where, if you're having a memo and it's the same exact word for word, it just saves you a bit of time right there as well. And because this was meant for San Jose location, I'm going to also enter that into my class as well as San Jose location, all right? Everything looks good. The check looks good. Everything looks good. Now, here's one thing I do need to tell you now. You have two options, okay? If you click Save Right Now, you're going to be bombarded with a pop-up window that says, go ahead and print your check now. Now, if you're a kind of company that likes to or pays bills very often in one sitting, you kind of want to hold it back and print all the checks all at once instead of doing one at a time. It could be counterproductive or whatever it means for you to be just paying your bills. But if you're going to have the printer be running all day, all night, just trying to print out one check at a time, then you can do so. But you have the option up here to print the check later. All right, and if I click on that, now notice this, my next check is supposed to be 332. If I click on print check later, the number disappears. Now what happens to the number? So when you actually print out it, which we'll take a look at the very end of this chapter, is that when you print it, you can assign a number and it's going to print on that check in order of the bills that you've accumulated, okay? So in this case, right, it will assign it when I say to assign it. But right now, if I save the transaction, it's going to be pending until I print it, okay? But for those that if I did not choose a print later, it's gonna automatically assign the number right there. I can reassign it. I can change the number. I can put in a new number. But the one thing that you have to do is that if you are going to be using that number, make sure that's the correct sequence. Okay, you don't want to jump around and put random numbers in there. You can't fix it. If you fix it, you're gonna have to reprint it again, because if you assign in the number now and you decide to hit that print button and that number's the wrong number, it will tell you, okay? Especially if you used that number before, QuickBooks will let you know. So QuickBooks is very, very, very good at keeping track of every check that you've written out with their associated check numbers, okay? So in this case, I am not going to print it out now. I'm going to decide to print it later. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close. Now, I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but you have two options at the bottom. One that says Save and Close, and the other one in blue says Save and New. Now, the difference between Save and Close and Save and New is that if you click Save and Close, that means you're done writing a check. That means there's no more after this. So once you click Save and Close, it just closes the window. Okay? If you decide to click Save and New, it's going to save the transaction, and then it's going to populate a brand new check for you to go ahead and keep working and keep putting in more checks simultaneously or as you go. So that's the difference between the two. And most cases, these are one-time transactions. So Save and Close is your best option here. Okay? And now that I click Save and Close, all right, I'm going to go ahead and access my check register. And what you're going to see here is, here's what I just entered in. And it says right here, to be printed, right? It was for Orlando Properties for the $3,200, and it took that out of my checking account. Now I am down to $8,000, okay? So once again, this is called accrual counting. Why? I haven't even paid them yet, but it automatically calculated as if I did make a payment. Okay? Because I said this is the transaction at hand. I'm paying my rent today, but I haven't released the check out. Okay? Any questions on how to use the write a checks function? Let's see if we're good on time. Okay. We could go for 15 more minutes. Okay. Any questions?
No.
None here.
Okay. So we got to take a look at paying a vendor manually by writing a check and entering in a register. We got to take a look at using the write a checks function. Now the last one we're going to be doing is going to be using the enter bills, and then we're going to actually pay the bill using the pay bills function. Okay. So let's take a look in our book to see what page we need to be on. So we just entered in our transaction. Okay. Okay, so we enter in that one. So here is going to be managing accounts payable. So we talked about how QuickBooks does the accounting behind the scenes. Every time you enter in a bill, okay, QuickBooks behind the scenes is going to create a journal entry saying that you owe money on an accounts payable, and it's going to be linked to whatever expense account that you associated it with, okay? And that's the accounting behind the scenes. Now, in this case, right, we don't see this journal entry. All we see is just looking it in at a single view where we're just simply adding the information and entering in a bill. So on our end, we're viewing it or entering it in as a single entry mode, okay? Where behind the scenes, it's actually creating that journal entry for you to to keep track of the transactions, to properly use the debit and credit system, okay? So in this case, right, we're going to take a look at how we actually enter a bill. pretty straightforward entering a bill, okay? Now, you can enter in a bill either using the home page, okay? Oh, home page right there, boom. You got the very first one, which is right there, the icon that says enter bills, okay? Now, let's go ahead and explore the other options because your book only tells you 2 ways to enter in a bill. I'm going to show you all 6 or 7 ways that you can enter a bill, okay? So the first one's right here on the home page. All right, home page, enter bills icon, right? Second one you could do is you could go to the vendors menu and you can enter in a bill that way. Okay, that's number 2. Okay. Any way that you can get to the vendor center, whether it's the home page, vendors menu, or icon bar, okay? Right? Oops, the wrong one. I hit the employee center instead. So let's go back to the home page. Okay, we could click the vendor center this way and be able to enter a transaction. How? You could go up to the top, new transactions, enter bill. Okay. You can select any person, right click on their name, and you'd be able to enter a bill that way too. Okay. And then, of course, we also have the manage transactions on every single person's, like when you select their profile, right? You have manage transactions down here. You click on that, you can enter in a bill this way by clicking bills, okay? All right? So that was 5 ways, right? Now, the 6th way is going to be using what's called your bill tracker, okay? Now, I was going to actually introduce you to this bill tracker when we dive into our first bill. But since I have to give you the ways to enter in a bill, here is one of those ones. Now, in 2018 is when they introduced the bill tracker, okay? Now, this is an easy way to keep track of your bills, right? It's highlighted in specific groups saying, this is the amount of bills that you owe. This is how many bills that are overdue. This is how many bills that you've paid. And what you're, basically, this gives you a summary of your accounts payable, okay? And it gives you a list of all the information, such as who you owe money to, right? When is it due, okay? Why did you why did you have this bill, okay? And they have the same managed transactions down below. And guess what? You can enter in a bill that way too. So there you go. That is 6 different ways you can enter in a bill. Okay? All right? So once again, let's review. You got the home page, right? The icon on the home page. You got the venues menu bar. Any way that you get into the vendor center, you have the new transactions at the top, manage transaction at the bottom, right click, and then you're able to do a transaction. And last but not least, bill tracker, you have manage transactions, enter bill. Okay. You do need to know all these ways, especially if you're certifying for the exam, because just because the book tells you there's only 2 ways to do it, QuickBooks certification is going to test you on all 7. Now, of course, the way that they ask you is going to be like, we'll enter in a bill. And you say, you go through the home page first. They tell you, sorry, that option is not available. Then you're going to go up to your vendors menu, and you're going to click on to enter bills. And then you're going to get an error message saying, uh-oh, sorry, that option is unavailable as well. Try again. And then you go to the vendor center, and then let's say you do manage transactions. If it accepts it, you will know because it will say next question. So once again, because the navigation portion isn't just using just the home page, it's going to be testing you on knowing the ins and outs of QuickBooks. So if you only know 2 ways to be able to enter in a transaction, you're going to have to, you might fail the first test. Okay? But remember, it's 1/3 of the exam is going to be navigation. Okay? So once again, I'm going to go back to the home page here. And I'm going to go ahead and enter in my bill. and I'm going to look at my page and look at what I need to enter in for this bill. Okay, so I need you guys to be on, let's see. I need you guys to be on page 134. Okay, we're going to be taking a look at entering our very first bill right here. Okay, so this bill is for a supply. Okay, so once again, we're going to take a look at our bill and we're going to be entering a supply. Okay, so once again, I'm going to type in ACE and there it is. Right, and notice this, the information here was plugged in, the information, yes, and other information such as terms were plugged in. The discount due date and discount date, or when the actual bill is due, is also there. Okay. Now, let's take a look at what the reference number is going to be. What's my reference number?
2085.
2085. Okay, that's my reference number. Okay, important that you know this because your reference number is always going to be given because, again, you're going to be receiving the bill. You can't modify it in a way that you want to do it for yourself. You can't say this is bill number 1. No, your bill is going to have some kind of bill number on it, a reference number, because you want to keep track of your bills that way. And when you make payments, you make payments by selecting that bill. Okay. So once again, 2085. Okay. Now you have the choice again. You can either place the amount here or you can add all your information down below and it will create your bill, create the amount at the top. Okay. So in this case, my amount here is going to be
380.
what was that?
380?
380?
I think it's an 8, yes.
Let's see what my paper says.
Should be 360.
360?
Yeah, 360.
360.
Yeah, sorry, the book is really bad. I understand. So 360, okay? And then we're going to be saying that this was in purchasing, we purchased cost of goods sold for the Walnut Creek location account. And we bought photo materials for Mr. Jerry Perez, okay? So here, what I'm going to write in the memo is going to be photo materials for Jerry Perez. Okay? Here, I'm linking an actual customer because I'm going to assign that I bought this paper, I bought this photo material specifically for this person. So once again, the account is going to be cost of goods sold. Okay, there you go. Just cost of goods sold for $360. Memo once again. I can copy and paste this from above. Okay. And then this is where we're going to be using customer/job. So as mentioned before, right, when you buy a particular item for a customer or for a person, this is where we can go ahead and list them in here. So then when I charge him or invoice him, I can automatically link this bill to him. Okay, we'll talk more about that in chapter 9. So now the class is, once again, Walnut Creek. Okay, so take a double, triple look at your book and compare it to this. Does this look good? If it does, then we can go ahead, click Save and Close. Okay, now you got that beep of approval. Okay, so let's see. There are a few things that you can do in regards to finding out where the bill actually went. Where can you locate this bill? Okay, so first one that we talked about, right, was the bill tracker. Okay, if I go ahead and pop up my bill tracker, boom, check it out. I have a new bill for $20.85 for Ace Supply, right? The due date, the discount due date is due, and it says it's overdue. That's just because it's taking into consider what today is. That part you can ignore. Okay, you have options to even pay the bill if you want to. Okay, there's lots of things that you can do. So here is way that we can track it. Okay? Another way that you could track it too is by running a report. Okay, so if I go up to my reports window and I go to vendors and payables, and I'm going to go ahead and click at vendor balance information. I can do that. I could go to unpaid. Where's unpaid bills? Unpaid bills right here, right underneath. And it will show me a report. I chose all dates, okay? I showed today, so I'm going to do all. All dates. So this tells me how many bills are currently overdue or open. They're open. So in this case, I owe, I think I owe Wong and Son, and I also owe Ace Supply for these total amount. So I have a grand total that I owe is $502. Okay? So there you go. That's what happens when you don't know what you did with your bill after that. Okay? Now, of course, another way that you could also check it too is also by simply going to the vendor center. Okay? If I go to my vendor center, right, and I know that, hey, I thought I wrote a bill out to Ace Supply. Okay. So here's my vendor center. If I click on Ace Supply, let me open up my window a little bigger. What I'm going to notice is at the very, very top here, it shows me that I have my bill right here. Okay. All right. Now, for any reason that you accidentally forgot the reference number, or you accidentally forgot to link the expense account to the San Jose location or the Walnut Creek location, you can come here and double click on the bill and you can modify it at any given time. Okay, so for example, if I want to modify the date, I can modify the date. If for any reason you need to modify the actual amount, that is something that you can do, but it could be there's other better reasons that you can do it too, especially when you're dealing with purchase orders and you make adjustments to it. There's another way that you can do that, but for practice purposes only, for any reason that you forgot to add detail to it, you can go in and modify it at any given time. What if I didn't buy photo materials? What if I actually end up buying photo paper for Mr. Jerry Perez? I can edit this information. If I made a typo, if I did anything that is wrong here, if I entered in 865 or 2065, I can go back in here and change it back to 2085 because, maybe I read it wrong. Right? So you can modify your bills any given time, right? You could all you have to do is just go to your vendor center, locate the bill, double click on it, and the bill will pop up. Okay? Any questions in regards to entering a bill?
It's not about, it's more or less about that. You see the clock on the top there?
The clock?
Yeah, on the top of the screen, you see you have report, and it's a small clock that is saying 0.
Okay.
She's talking about the one that says that we have
Alarm or
8 or 9
something like that.
unpaid bills. It's up at the upper
Yeah,
right
that's
corner.
a reminder to pay the.
It's just reminders. Yes, it's just reminders.
Yes, if the date, you cannot check from there the unpaid bills too. It's a reminder too, no?
Yes, you can set reminders on here if you need to. That is something that I believe we learned in chapter 14. But in this case, QuickBooks will not remind you to pay your bills unless you set a reminder. Okay, so
Maybe it's because the date, because I have a date, I don't know what I did. Maybe it's because I didn't change. The date is, I think I put the date after the date that, for example, it's where the 12 or the 13, something like that. So it remind me that I had to pay one of the bills. Maybe it's a mistake on the date that I did.
it's probably so, or because the other ones that from the previous one they'll give you a reminder on that just because that is overdue.
Mm-hmm.
But for most cases, if you didn't change the date on here, that's probably why. It's telling you a reminder right now because fast forward right now, the date today is July 12th. And like I said, QuickBooks will always, because you're using the internet, will pick up the date that you're actually currently using it. So in this case, we are retroactively entering in these bills. We're putting these bills from the past now, today. Okay?
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question, but yes, you can
Yes,
set
yes.
reminders. Yes, you can.
Yes, yes.
All right. Any other questions? No? No questions?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, it is getting to be okay, perfect. It's 3:15. All right, go ahead and take your 15-minute break and please be back no later than 3:30. We'll continue on and hopefully we get through chapter 4 today. There's a lot of stuff in here. Okay? All right, be back by 3:30.